Hey guys, we're back again. This time we're going to be talking about the Sacramento Kings.
Yeah, so last year, the Sacramento Kings, they had a pretty up and down year. They showed some promise at the beginning of the year. Then they fired the coach, Mike Malone. Then they hired George Karl. And they eventually finished the season at 29-53, missing the playoffs yet again.
Yeah, the weird thing about the firing of Malone, they started to dip right before they fired him. And that was just because DeMarcus Cousins had that flu.
He got mono.
Yeah, mono. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was just out. And it was kind of ridiculous. Without a star player, I don't know what they expected from him. But anyway, move on. So, additions from this offseason. They signed Rajon Rondo to the veterans minimum. They drafted elite defensive prospect Willie CauleyStein.
Do you mean Willie Trill?
Willie Trill. Took Marco Bellinelli, Costa Koufos, Seth Curry, Quincy Acey, James Anderson, and Caron Butler.
By his autobiography, Tough Juice, out now.
As far as losses, obviously they lost the energy big Derek Williams, former first-round pick Jason Thompson, lottery pick Nick Stauskas. We'll get into that one. Andre Miller's gone now over to Minnesota. Ray McCallum's with the Spurs. Carl Landry with Nick Stauskas go over in Philly. Ryan Hollins, I don't care.
Memphis.
I don't care. He hasn't played minutes in forever. And Reggie Evans. So, Shaw, where does you feel about these off-season moves?
I think Sacramento was like the desperate dude at the club. Like, they gave up so much just to get Rajon Rondo. Like, they tried to make a play at, I believe, Robin Lopez.
They made plays at every person.
Everyone.
Like,
they hit on Irwin.
The reports were ridiculous. I remember sitting at home and just getting updates. Monta Ellis turned them down. Wes Matthews turned them down. They had to settle for Marco Bellinelli as their replacement shooting guard.
And they had to settle with Rajon Rondo, who probably quit on his team.
Yeah.
He quit on it. Yeah.
They were looking to make the trade with Boston. I know that was a rumored thing, but I'm pretty sure it got confirmed later on that there was a huge thing that they were talking with Boston for a draft day trade for DeMarcus Cousins. So yeah, not happy in Sacramento, and obviously they dumped. We talked about the lottery pick. I want to get more into that later. So let's talk about their lineup. Projected starting lineup: point guard Rajon Rondo, shooting guard Ben McLemore, small forward Rudy Gay. This one was weird to me. Cousins, I don't know if you've heard this. Cousins has come out publicly and said, "I'm not a center." So
he's a force of nature.
He's apparently going to start power forward, and they're going to bring in Willie CauleyStein as their starting center or Costa Koufos. I know George Karl is I think he's leaning more towards Koufos just because he knows Koufos from Denver.
Right.
But I think management wants CauleyStein to start. I don't know how that's going to play out.
Yeah, I think Karl is just used to coaching fast lineups, and I really don't know
if this is a fast lineup.
Yeah. I don't think that really fits into the George Karl style of offense.
Yeah.
Having a huge guy in DeMarcus Cousins play the 4, where I think in the perfect George Karl world, he'd start Rudy Gay at the 4.
No, exactly. And the weird thing about it is Cousins didn't handle Karl's style well. We saw that.
Yeah, he wasn't even happy with the Mike Malone firing.
Karl tried to make him more into like a distributor and like a running gun, and Cousins responded by posting huge turnover numbers. Huge. And he was so unhappy about it. We remember all of that talk. So I don't think putting him at the power forward, where now he has to guard smaller people, he still has to run, and now the center spot's gunned by like a bigger guy. Like I don't know if he's gonna like this. I know he's coming out, he's saying he's fine with it, he doesn't see himself as a center, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this lineup right now. Who knows? Maybe they'll prove us all wrong. What's your stat for this team that you see being their defining characteristic?
Okay, my stat for this team is DeMarcus Cousins' player impact rating per NBA.com. It was the 3rd highest in the league. It was Chris Paul, LeBron James, or 4th highest in the league. Chris Paul, LeBron James, Steph Curry, DeMarcus Cousins.
Right.
So Cousins was a really integral player. He's definitely maybe the top 2 or 3 centers in the league. Whether they play him at power forward or not, I see him as a center, and I think he wants, or the league wants him to be a center, but that's another story. But Cousins is going to be a really important player. And I don't know how he fits with George Karl's system like you were talking about before and how well he meshes with Rajon Rondo. But I don't know if he'll be able to win at this stage. The way they have this team constructed right now isn't great at all. I mean, they're definitely talented, but some of the pieces don't really fit together. So I think they should just focus more on building around him.
I agree. My stat for this is assists per game, as well as their assist percentage. They ranked number 26 in both categories. They didn't distribute the ball that well at all. And obviously their focal point was DeMarcus Cousins, so it's understandable. They had Darren Collison. They still do have Darren Collison, but he went down. You didn't really have any reliable playmakers after that. So we're going to give a lot of crap to Rajon Rondo. But that's going to come up. But I think he can really turn that around for this team. Everything else aside about his field goal percentage, his headbutting coaches, his
being a quitter,
his choking Doc Rivers that one time that people kind of like just don't talk about anymore, even though he should have been out of the league at that point. But whatever, his being a quitter, his everything. It's just he's still a great passer. We know that. That is most definitely a redeeming attribute of his. He can get the rock to players. They're not going to be ranking that low in assists per game or in assist percentage. Definitely not an assist percentage. Another odd stat that they sucked in, assists per turnover. They were number 29 in that. And that was obviously, Cousins started trying to pass the ball. Karl wanted him to become like a point center, and that was just not happening. He was very forced, and it showed that he was not comfortable. He's a good passing big man. He's not when you're trying to like make him throw the rock in at people. But I think they should improve in all of those categories regarding assists. And that's definitely something to watch for, because that might give this team a little bit more of a competitive edge.
Yeah, I think transitioning into the big picture, I feel like this team is going to be better. Like you were saying, they're going to have more of an edge this season. Hopefully everyone's a lot healthier. And I think the biggest question with this team is Rondo. We already know what we're getting with Cousins. We already know what we're getting with Rudy Gay, who's quietly still a pretty good player. And it's pretty intriguing to see how Rondo will do, especially with George Karl. We'll probably get into the George Karl-Rondo relationship in the social media portion, but I'm really intrigued to see how that dynamic will work. Because last year, Darren Collison had a pretty good year for this team. He was the starter for probably maybe the second time in his career that he was a full-fledged starter. He averaged pretty good numbers last season. He shot it at 47%, 37% from three, averaging 16 points per game, 5 assists, and 3 rebounds, which is probably slightly above average for a point guard.
Yeah, no,
so I don't know what you're getting with Rondo, because he definitely won't shoot it and score it as much as Collison, but he'll maybe be a better defender and hopefully be better passing. But that's if he decides to show up or not. And I'm also really curious to see how Willie CauleyStein does, too. He was probably the second best guy coming out of Kentucky last season, and he's being really hyped as a Tyson Chandler type player. So I'm really interested to see how he fits with Cousins and how he develops as a player these next couple of years.
Speaking of Willie CauleyStein pick, it was weird. It was definitely weird. I know I didn't understand it. I don't know if you had any more understanding of it than I. I know a lot of people were confused by it because they have a center. Willie CauleyStein, with those Tyson Chandler comparisons, he's a starting center. So it was a little odd. Obviously, they're trying to fit it, make them play together, which could be weird. Tyson Chandler.
Willie Trill over Moutier.
Yeah.
Stanley Johnson.
There was definitely needs that they could have filled. But it's fine. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but Willie CauleyStein could develop into a very good player. Obviously, Tyson Chandler is considered a very good player because of his defense. Now, he's not much of an impact on scoring. He'll drop in 10 points off lobs and put back points, but he's more of a rebounder and a defender. Willie CauleyStein will follow that. He's shown he has those tools, but I don't know if that's exactly what you want. People said, oh, that's perfect. DeMarcus Cousins needs a front court mate that can defend and take some of the pressure off him defensively. Jason Thompson was not a bad defender. He never emerged as a star that people had hoped he would, but I think it's scouts' fault that they projected this ceiling of his that was so far over what he proved he was. I don't. Jason Thompson was never supposed to be spectacular. Watching him, you could tell he's a good player. He's not a great one. He's not going to be amongst like the top 50 in the league ever, but he can defend. He can put in those energy buckets, like, get an offensive rebound, put it back. So dropping him and then like saying he wasn't good enough and then drafting like another energy guy in Willie CauleyStein, I don't know.
I think CauleyStein's definitely an upgrade over Thompson.
He's an upgrade. I'm not saying that he's not better, but I'm saying the fit is still weird when Jason Thompson was a natural power forward to DeMarcus Cousins center. I don't understand that, and I don't think I will. So I'll move on from it. But my big picture for this year, I think Rondo could really spring back. He had a huge down year. Obviously, the Mavericks system was not his ideal place. You could tell that from looking at it. It was very ball moving, and then Monta Ellis would take it. Rondo needs the ball to be effective. He needs the ball, and he dishes it to other people. That wasn't going to fly when you have Chandler Parsons, who needs his ISO touches. Dirk Nowitzki, who kind of needs ISO touches. He can work in the pick and roll, but that's never been a Rondo strong suit because people just sag off. He can't shoot, yada, yada, yada. Monta Ellis needs the ball. Monta Ellis is the same size as Rondo practically. Needs the exact same things. He's a little bit of a better shooter, and he chucks more, so I don't know. There was nothing to really help Rondo there. It was a very poor fit from the start. So I think he could come back in a George Karl system that's more of like a fast-paced one. Obviously, there's a chance that this could implode, and we'll get into that in the social media one, but this is the deepest I've seen Sacramento in a long time. Their starting lineup: Rondo, McLemore, Gay, Cousins, CauleyStein. That's gonna be a decent one. But then the issue that they got into last year was when their starters went to the bench, when Cousins and Gay took a breather. This was after Collison got hurt. When Collison was in, obviously there was difference. But when their starters took a breather, they sucked. But now you're turning it over. Obviously, it's not an elite bench, but you have Darren Collison coming in. You have Marco Bellinelli, Costa Koufis, Caron Butler. And
you have a Curry coming off the bench, too.
Yeah, you have Seth Curry. You also have and Omer Caspi, who's, he's not an amazing player at all. I'm not saying that. But these are like rotation quality players, which Sacramento didn't really have in the past few years. So while people have been saying how bad of an offseason this was for Sacramento, and trust me, it was, considering what they tried to do and failed to do, it was still a decent one in terms of they kind of primed their team to have a decent rotation for the first time in what feels like forever.
Yeah.
So, moving on then, what do you have them at an excitement scale?
So I have them at a 3.5. I mean, I think that's mostly because I really dislike Rondo.
That's fair.
Yeah. I really like DeMarcus Cousins. I really like Ben McLemore. But I don't know how this team will play, especially having Rajon Rondo at the point guard. I'm going to say that over and over again.
Yeah.
You kind of have some really okay players that are good players but aren't too exciting, in Rudy Gay and Darren Collison. But I really wouldn't really say I'd watch this team if they were on TV.
Yeah, that's very true.
I'd watch highlights of DeMarcus Cousins, but I wouldn't really watch for anyone else. I mean, CauleyStein looks to be interesting, but I'll give him 2 or 3 years before he becomes great.
Mm-hmm.
And McLemore looks like he's going to be a pretty good player in the league, but again, he's not too exciting for me. I mean, I think that's what this whole rating is about. Like, how much do you want to watch this team? And for me, there's nothing really outside of DeMarcus Cousins that makes me really excited for this team.
I gave him a 5. I gave him a 5.0, straight down the middle. Just because the idea of their roster seems fun. To take the offensive pressure off Cousins, have Rondo just dish it to him, he scores, can focus more on defense and show that side of his game, which we haven't gotten to see in full display because he's always just carrying the team. It seems fun, or like a quick outlet pass to Rudy Gay to dunk it, or McLemore to dunk it. That does seem cool to me, but just as easily, this could blow up. Cousins and Rondo are explosive personalities, and you have it with one of the more angry and likes to fight coaches. He's very antagonistic. So this could really come back to haunt them. That's why I had to go 5.0. I can't give up on it because it seems like a good idea. Like on paper, it seems like it could work and do that. Just get them over that hump that they've been missing. But it also seems like it could put them in dead last if it goes wrong. If you have Rondo have another sultry season where he just quits on the team, that would be, they'd be miserable. And it could very much influence Cousins to be in a bad mood, and we've seen what happens when Cousins in a bad mood. This team just does horrible.
Yeah. I think something that'll bump this rating up for me is see if they go small ball more.
Yeah.
I mean, having Caspian Gay at the 4 would be a lot more exciting than having that
Cousins. The Cousins, CauleyStein,
CauleyStein, Cousins front court.
Yeah. Record for this team.
So I see them making a little bit of an improvement. Last year they won 29 wins. I see them in the 30 to 35 win range. I see them being a lot more competitive this season, especially with an improved Cousins and having more flexibility and having a full season with George Karl. The thing with George Karl is he gets his teams to play hard, he gets them to win, and he gets them to play exciting basketball.
Regular season.
Regular season basketball. I mean, they'll be competitive. They're going to be improved over last year, but I don't see them making the playoffs just yet.
I have them at 37 wins. Whether or not that's enough in the Western Conference, we know while some teams have gotten better, a lot have also gotten worse. But I have them at 37 right now. Whether or not that's enough for the playoffs, we'll see.
Right.
For a lot of reasons, as you said, George Karl is a phenomenal regular season coach. And I'm not saying that to insult him, saying he's bad in the postseason. It's just what the numbers have shown. Cousins could really boost this up. He says that he wants to be the MVP. So,
doesn't every player want to be the MVP?
Well, yeah, but I mean, he went out there and said he could definitely be the MVP, which I think he could be. I think he gets overlooked in it. I feel like these teams that he's on, while they're bad, you need to look at the players around him.
Yeah, he still has a bad rep because of his attitude.
Exactly, which kind of almost cost him the All-Star game last year, that whole thing. But to see some maturation on the court, maybe he, challenges for one of the titles, whether it be points per game, rebounds per game, one of those. If he could try to get in there in the conversation of the tops, top 1 to 3 of some of those stats, that'd be really good. With Rondo giving him the ball, I think it might make it a little bit easier on him scoring. So we'll see how that works out. But yeah, I think 37 wins for this team is kind of a generous ceiling.
Guess we can move on now to our final point, social media. So, how long before you think this Rondo-George Karl relationship blows up? They're already clashing now. There's been plenty of reports saying, Rondo and Karl are clashing, and it's not even the beginning of the season yet.
We've seen this every year with Rondo. And what I don't understand is, you convinced George Karl to be the coach. If you're Sacramento management, you convinced George Karl to be the coach, who he took a break from coaching because of health concerns, because he was not having the best time. He was very stressed from his tenure with the Nuggets and dealing with management there and everything.
He was fired after a Coach of the Year season. Exactly.
There was just a lot. He got blindsided. He was dealing with personalities we found out later were kind of volatile there, and Ty Lawson, Ken Fareed kind of giving up and all that stuff. He had to deal with a lot, and he also was kind of battling Mark Jackson, that whole Golden State series. It was a stressful time for George Karl, and he took a break. He was like, okay, I've been doing this for a while. I got a good resume. I'm just going to take a step back. And you convinced him to come back to coach one of the poutiest players in DeMarcus Cousins. He obviously reformed. He became better, but he had the rep still, like you said. He had the rep of being one of the bigger tantrum throwers. And they clashed. And over the offseason, it was a whole thing. Are they going to trade Cousins to keep Karl? Are they going to fire Karl to keep Cousins, etc.? They mended. They agreed that they weren't going to fight, and they put on a whole show look, we're buddies now. This is great. You then signed one of the biggest locker room killers. I mean, Doc Rivers, an amazing coach. He clashed with Doc Rivers. Rick Carlisle, a phenomenal coach. he clashes with Rick Carlisle. There weren't reports if he clashed with Brad Stevens, but I could only assume. What?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I could only assume he clashed with Brad Stevens. Because Brad Stevens was younger and didn't have the resume that these 3 other greats have had. Like, he's clashed now with 3 legendary coaches.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you're thinking with him, and him somewhat having an effect on Cousins. If Rondo's jawing off on Carl, don't you think Cousins is gonna like maybe fall back into those bad ways that he kind of was just getting out of?
Yeah.
It's the same type of effect. If you looked at the Denver Nuggets when Carl was coaching them and they got Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson kind of formed Carmelo Anthony and J.R. Smith's work ethic of the team. They were 2 young players with that team. They've said it's been a documented thing about Carmelo Anthony. Allen Iverson didn't want to work that well, so Carmelo Anthony didn't really put in the work that much. And it kind of changed the whole trajectory of their careers, supposedly. Obviously, it's all hypothetical, but you can't just put a player like that, a player with kind of a bad work ethic or a bad mentality, with one of your younger stars. And I think this was a very poor move. I liked Rondo in Boston. I did. And I'm not doubting Rondo's ability as a distributor. But he has shown he has a bad manner. He's shown he's angry. He's shown he thinks he knows best. He's jawed up to how many refs? He's hit refs. Like, I don't understand why he's still in the league. Actually, if I'm gonna be serious and turn off like the basketball thing, like the fact that he's a good passer and he'll make this team better because of assists, turn all of that off and just look at him as a person. I don't know how he's still employed in the NBA.
I mean, he has a great reputation being an NBA champion, like being like the youngest player with Rondo, KG, and Pierce.
But just look at any film of like a fight, and Rondo's like, go on YouTube, type in NBA fights. Rondo will be in one of them most likely.
Yeah.
He starts fights with other players. He starts fights with refs. He starts fights with coaches. Like I find it very surprising that they would choose him, especially when you had Darren Collison. I agree he might serve better as a spark plug off the bench, but it's a weird fit to me with him and Carl.
That was all they could get.
I know, but I don't know if you should have bitten still. I know they were desperate at that point, so they had to make a move, but I just don't know if it was the right one because I don't know if him and Carl's going to work out. I hope it does for the Kings. I really do, because I would like to see this team do well. I would like to see DeMarcus Cousins play some winning basketball, but I think it might bite them in the ass.
Yeah. Definitely possible.
Anything else on this team?
I mean, I think the Rondo vent session has been pretty much covered. So
yeah.
I think we're good. I mean, I think the other big thing that I saw was DeMarcus Cousins dunked it on Anthony Davis at the Kentucky homecoming. So who'd you take in a one-on-one matchup? Cousins or Davis? Strictly one-on-one.
Cousins one-on-one. Yeah, Cousins one-on-one. Yeah. All right, well, I guess that's it then.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys.
Rondo sucks.